part. Oh, great. He's part of our HopeUC. He's part of the Maitland campus, and he and his wife are a great asset, great pillars in that campus. Steve Bruce, the campus pastor there, and I had the wonderful opportunity to go and have breakfast a couple of weeks ago with Leroux, and I heard some of his story, and I immediately thought, oh gee, I'd really love him to take a couple of minutes tonight and share his story. What in the past we've done these sort of mastermind evenings. They've been physical, at a physical campus, and that's been good and a challenge, of course, because geography. But thank God for Zoom, and thank God that I can see that there are people here from interstate and other places, and so what a great opportunity we have. So let me just read you Leroux's bio, the professional bio. Leroux's professional career includes strategic management, investor relationships, regional financial and operational control and reporting, mergers and acquisitions, staff motivation and development, corporate governance. His strong leadership with motivational management style, and he has a reputation for building and mentoring highly motivated teams. He is an atypical financial personality with strategic focus and an analytical approach. Leroux, good evening and welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening. I'm so looking forward to just hearing from you and just listening to what you've got to say. Maybe the way to introduce yourself to this group is why don't you tell us, take a couple of minutes and tell us about the God story. Tell us about, were you born again as a baby, or is the journey a little different to that?
Thanks, Dave. Everybody can hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Dave, and good evening, everyone. I see some familiar faces here, so Dan, so you've heard some of my story before. I was very, very fortunate that I was born into a very devotional Christian family. So my mum and dad were both Christians. My grandparents were as well. The whole family was. So conservative back in South Africa. So that's where I was born. And grew up in the church, did the whole thing from a very young age, got introduced to Jesus, loved him, followed. And I gave my heart to Jesus when I was young, a little kid. It wasn't until mid-20s that I got baptized as an adult. I grew up in the church where it was the Dutch Reformed Church, very, very conservative church. They did baptism for small children. When I eventually probably got more brains than I had when I was young, I decided, listen, okay, no, I want to do the public confession as well. So I did my baptism mid-20s. So I've always, the whole time, I've been a Christian. There were periods when I was closer to the Lord, or periods when I was further away from him. I think later in life I became closer and closer to him as I probably witnessed more and more how good he is for us and how good he is to us, and his unbelievable grace and mercy that he pours out on us on a daily basis. So that's my way, and I'm very, very glad I've got a God-fearing, lovely angel of a wife as well, which is also Christian. So that's cool. Yeah,
man, it's amazing, wonderful. Let me ask you a couple of questions, if we can sort of jump into a bit of the career path. So, what you've done in your career, which we'll get into in a minute, was in your teenage years, as you were in your high school, and I mean, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you want to be an astronaut, a fireman? What did you want to be?
It's a really good question, because for us, it's a funny answer. So when people ask me when I was very young, what would you like to be one day? And apparently I can't remember this, but apparently my question was, I just want to be a plain man like my dad. Obviously, I didn't understand what he was doing, but he was an accountant by trade as well. But he was an entrepreneur, a very, very successful entrepreneur in South Africa. So I don't know, maybe wise words, because eventually I ended up being in a very entrepreneurial firm as well, and my last 17 years of my career. So what I said I wanted to be, I actually became. So that was basically it.
Well, and then, okay, so then let's get into what was your first job, by the way? I'm curious. What was your first employment?
Full-time employment post studies, because during studies I sort of well, my first job was when I was 12 years old and delivered newspapers. I got paid for that, so you can probably say that was my first job. But my first formal job was being an article clerk, because I'm a trained CPA, so a trained CPA. So in other words, for my first, you had to do it, correct? You have to do the article, the practical as well, before you can be qualified. So that was my first job. But after that, we in South Africa back then, you still had to do military service. Right. And I've already studied. I was like early 20s and whatever, so I wasn't really in the mood. And there was rumors that they're going to cancel that. And then instead of going to the army, because we were trained auditors and qualified CPAs, the tax department said, you can come and work for us and do auditing for the tax department on companies. Right. So I went and did that. So that's basically my first job, was working for the tax man.
It might have been more brutal working for the tax department than it would the military, right?
Yeah, I'm actually. I don't know if I must be sad or happy for the money that I got back from the people.
Well, I think the government was happy. And then back at that time, I suppose I'm asking you now to think back, but going to church and working, for the tax department or in those spaces, for you, was there a clear merger between what your spirit, your faith life, and your work life? Were they two different worlds, or did you understand them to be very interlinked?
Back in that days, when I started working that stuff, it was. In South Africa back then, it was reasonably conservative environment as well. So in other words, a large proportion of the country was Christians then. So in other words, in your Christian, in your workplace, you found a lot of Christians. So in other words, you had common grounds, you had common discussions to do. You had the ones that is just in name as well, and you had the ones that was completely just not interested. But my work in South Africa, I was actually, of all the different jobs I had, everywhere it was okay to be a Christian, and everybody knew it, and I knew you go to church on Sunday and you could do these things and things like that. When I moved out of South Africa into my international career, that's when it became. I've got that's one of the big challenges that we had. I'll speak a bit later about. It changed. It was a bit different.
Yeah, great. And so, sure, there were other Christians in the workplace. Did you, let me give you an example. So working for the tax department, did you see your role in the tax department as, and I want to say this with inverted commas, as ministry, as ministry, or did, in the same sense that you would, see the pastor doing ministry? Did you see it as this sort of spiritual calling, in the depth of that, or was it, no, you were a Christian doing a secular job? Probably that's probably the way to ask it.
It is. It's the latter one. It's more a Christian doing the secular job. Right. And for most of my career, it was like that. It became more and more difficult later on in the global space to be ministering in the job. You're not allowed to. Okay, that's part of the challenges that you have. But thinking back of it, it's probably people accepted that's the norm. It wasn't a specific thing that you had to go and do. The people accepted the norm was that most of the people in the workplace is Christians, and because you employ people, you employ like-minded people, and often the like-minded people would have been people with a Christian background.
Sure.
That comes across your desk to interview and things like that. So that sort of cycle was there. That sort of flywheel was there that sort of made it happen more and more. But the large community was Christian. So I think it's a Christian country. So I think by numbers and by mathematics and stats, it would appear and happen that a lot of the employees would be Christians. Yeah.
Great. The company that you ended up, working for, that then ended up going into a globe. Can you tell us, like a bit of a summary? Tell us this story. What were you employed initially? What was that company? And then just walk us through that story a little bit.
Okay. So I was working in South Africa at that point in time. I came back from an expat job in Botswana, and both Cindy and I woke up one morning and thought, and when we spoke to each other, we thought, I feel like we need to go overseas and work somewhere overseas. We had this burning sensation in our hearts and our feelings that we wanted to do that. I wasn't even looking for another job, and just had this conversation. So a day or so went past, and then the next thing led to the other thing, and then this opportunity came about for me to join this very dynamic company. They had a position open in Nigeria, to go as head of finance in Nigeria. Now, Cindy and I said to each other, that's not really what we thought. San Francisco, London, Tokyo. So, okay, Lagos. It's like the armpit of Africa in many aspects. It's chaotic. Anyway, long story short, so I applied and went for the interviews, and we just prayed, lifted up to God, and said, listen, if it has to be, it let it be. So I went for the psychometric test. Lovely. At the end, the guy said to me, I don't think you're the right fit for this job. So I said, okay, so that's nice to hear. So I said to him, well, I think, okay, that we won't go. I thought the companies listen to these psychometric testers, I think. Anyway, next day I got a call and said to him, listen, do you want to go for a look-see in Nigeria? So I thought somewhere that, so maybe these tests, they do it, but they don't really listen to what the guys tell them. Anyway, so
thinking back now, do you think it was just God's providence there,
yes,
just leading the way? Yeah,
I think so. In that whole process of actually what had happened is, so in others, so then I said, listen, we go for it. God, if it will happen, God will make it all fall into place. We're going to this probably one of the most chaotic places in the world, top 3 corrupt countries in the world, to go for a look-see, whatever. Now, we don't have too much time to tell you how chaotic it was and that whole first experience. Unbelievable, maybe for another time. But it was unbelievably amazing how everything just fell into place. We got there, interviewed the boss that was going to be my boss there, and things like that back. And one thing led to another thing, and I got offered the job. Contrary to what they thought they needed somebody that is forceful, to stand up against the corruption, to be whatever, a more forceful kind of person, where I was more a people's person, listen to people talk and get to a point of understanding, to a common ground. And in hindsight, God made it happen, because in hindsight, that's exactly what they needed. They needed somebody to go in and convince people that I'm working for you and with you, not against you, to put in these processes and things and whatever. And
do you think that, sorry to interrupt, do you think that style of leadership did that come out of do you feel like it came out of a value set of, out of your Christianity? Like, do you feel like was that this thought about, do you feel like it was something that came out because you were a Christian, like in the sense of that kingdom value, that kingdom culture?
I think so. I think God probably made me like that. He nurtured and molded me into that way to do that. And I've used that in my whole career to mentor people as well. And it very successfully. But through it all, to stay humble, because I mean, if you don't have the humility of your achievements, It's very easy in the secular world to go and become proud, correct? And then things will tumble down.
Well, sometimes, especially like you said, in an open market, the ego is celebrated, championed even sometimes at those executive levels, and it's almost he with the biggest ego wins, which is definitely the way of the Babylonians. But it's as a believer, which is the challenge, right? How do you beat the ego, pride-driven leadership model? Well, you bring humility, you bring kingdom value, and then the results, I suppose, then are in the hands of God, right?
No, it is absolutely, and you have to trust him for it. You sometimes think, oh, I blew this because I didn't want to do that, but at the end of the day, it comes around and it actually works to your favor. It actually, you say, oh, look how good God was, because if I would have done this in the mid to longer terms, it would have been completely wrong. And then sometimes, because you said no because of your values, it was the right thing. It's just the right thing at the end of the day. Forget Christian values, that is just the right thing to do.
Was there ever, that brings a good point, was there ever a moment where you were given direction or asked to do something, execute some sort of an order or something that you either had to refuse or you had to say, look, you've got to give this to somebody else because, it violates, that. Have you ever, was there ever a moment that you could share with us maybe that there was maybe a conflict and you had to make a call or take a stand?
I was very lucky to this extent as well. The company that I started to work for originated in South Africa. So at the then CEO and his whole executive team were Christians. He subsequently retired as CEO. He's not just chairman, but so the whole company was built on Christian values. So in other words, we were not asked to do things that was illegal. Doesn't matter where you are. We were never. It's in our policies not to bribe, not to pay things, not to take gifts, and so those kingdom principles is entrenched in the company, in the group. But even today it is, because globally the group wants to do the right thing. So I don't think they are. I think it's rooted in how the group was set up from the original Christian principles. But the global community is requiring on a base level to be good. On a base level, you shouldn't bribe people. You mustn't take gifts. You must be good to the environment. All those things come out. So in other words, I think to that extent in today's days, it's that. So I was never asked to do something from the group's point of view. But I did experience some stuff where I had to, because the principles just say no, and that could have had consequences. As an example, in Nigeria, so being the finance person responsible for the finance for audited financials. So, and as like in Australia, you have to submit it and file it with the authorities. Got a call.
Sorry, Leroux, are you able to just help us? So what sort of scope is this? A small enterprise? Are we talking that the administration here is maybe a couple of $1 million, or was it a larger company that actually had a much more significant holding? You don't have to disclose the fullness of it, but
no, it was massive. I mean, the company at that point in time, the subset for the group that I worked for is similar to what Foxtel is here. So it was for, and one of the subsidiaries was SuperSport. I mean, if you watch rugby, you'll see a little red S and the broadcasters. So that was the company in the group that I worked for. SuperSport was a little subset of us. So we had the SuperSport team in Nigeria as well. But it's the whole administration of the subscribers. It was the only one in Africa that actually did satellite television. So it was massive, and we were printing money. We made an unbelievable fortune. So it was huge. Significant. Significant. Hence the big demand in Nigeria. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. I mean, that's basically what it is. So I always said in Nigeria, my two biggest problems that I had is to keep the cash in the company, that the employees don't steal it. And the next one is to get the cash out of the country to the holding company, because the government wants to take it. So, other than that, they were printing money. So
Oh, that's great.
So this guy, the CEO of the Chartered Accountant Institute of Nigeria, calls me and says, listen, I need to come to his office. He sort of demanded me coming to his office. So I go. That's where we file. It's like Isaac's or whatever here in Australia. I file the statements he wants to see me. So I get there. Apparently, there's some fines now because there's errors in the statements. Long story short, there were no errors. They were like typesetting errors. So the one paragraph was a little bit left or right, and there was one typo that he showed me on some page and whatever. And I said to him, but this is ridiculous. All he wanted, he said, however, he can make it go away if I provide services to him and a few of his family members as well. He can give me a list of about 10 people, basically giving him free access to entertainment. I said to him, but I mean, I tried to negotiate with the guy. I said, listen, but I mean, this is not errors. This is not according to your regulation. It's not a fine. No, whatever. Anyway, so it's okay, fine, no, but I can't do it. So I left. Right. So if I think if I wasn't a Christian, it wasn't that the principles, it would have been so easy. I mean, because I had the authority to give people complimentary access. Okay. So just and let the thing go away. But I said, no, I'm not. A lot of effort, a lot of issues, a lot of hours of deliberation afterwards even ensued. But stood the ground. Eventually I handed it over to our auditors. Listen, you fix it. I'm not going to pay a fine. It's not finable. I'm not going to pay a bribe. You fix it out. And so, by the way, I rely on you. We're a foreign company. You're the guy that needs to fix it because we rely on you to tell us what to do in your local regulations. And we did. And it eventually, a year later, it went away. Okay. But I stood firm. And you had to start. I mean, if you give into that, then it goes, it just steamrolls into something.
I was going to say, it steamrolls. That's it's a challenge, and it's something that I think I mean, you're doing that at a very high level, but I just think believers in general, there are moments of compromise, and almost in the marketplace, one of the challenges is the compromises, they can almost seem justifiable. I don't want to say that everything's black and white in church, but in the marketplace, there are so many variables that sometimes you can just say, well, it's the way that the system works. And, and a lot of the time when you do stand up for righteousness, like you said, that the challenge is that in the natural, there aren't any guarantees that this is not going to go bad for you. And so in that point, you've got to do the right thing and just believe in the justice of God to back you, right?
You have to. Yeah, I agree with you. You have to. You just have to trust him. I mean, you did the right thing, and you left it up to him, and you trust him. And then for me, it worked. It worked out. Doing it that way,
I think so. And even if it doesn't work out in the sense that whatever it goes the other way, I think even if worst case scenario you get fired or whatever, I mean, at least you've got fired, but you've held your integrity and your witness, right, and your testimony. So I'm 1,000,000% there. What about I love this thought of God at work, and God with us at work. Was there ever maybe you were trying to solve a problem or an issue, or there was a task that you had to do, and you needed, I'm going to say, you needed some divine wisdom, to break in, God to just kind of open a door, or you just went, God, I don't know what to do, and there was some sort of a breakthrough. Was there any sort of a moment or a time there where you really just needed to call out to God to say, God, I don't know what to do here?
Not as I recall, not a specific one time that I had to do that. I think for me and Cindy, because I think it's together that we did it. So we try to live close to God. In other words, when we do make the decision, because we made big decisions to relocate from one country to another country. It's not a small decision. So in other words, so we let God into the decision, and we ask him to let it be. It's more the reverse, where we've tried to push something so hard by ourselves
Uh-huh.
because we thought we wanted it, and then God just closed the door one after the other. We opened
Right.
this thing, get a foot in to make sure we want to go there, and they just I think I mentioned that to you when we had breakfast, like moving from Singapore to Hong Kong at that point in time. So in other words, I travel a lot, so we wanted to find a nice place or an acceptable place for Cindy to stay when I'm not there. So we found a nice place on the 30th floor or whatever. It's like a little tiny. It's a stamp size little accommodation, but nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And Cindy was acceptable. She would stay there when I travel and things like that. And we pay a deposit and we fly back to Singapore, and suddenly the landlord just cancels the deposit. He said, no, she's renting it out, leasing it out to somebody else.
Yeah.
And Cindy, at that point in time, I mean, we were like hooked, we were committed, we moving from Singapore to Hong Kong, and that's what it is. And we saw 20 to 30 places, and that was the only one. So we thought at that point, we said, okay, God, this is the one that you showed us because it fits everything that we wanted to find. And then even the landlord accept our offer and accept our deposit. We said, okay, in the bag. No, it's not. Landlady canceled everything. So then we jumped on the wagon, and Cindy phones, even gets other estate. Takes a long story short, she tried every single thing, and every single time she wanted to do something, it just didn't work, didn't reopen, and eventually we lost it. And we said, we prayed and said, listen, okay, so obviously God, you didn't want us to go there. So you closed that door, even though we've tried to force it open so many times.
Yeah.
And then we prayed about it. So listen, so you must show us what to do now. I mean, how do we do that? Because I mean, now wait 2 months and then go and have a look again, what new things have come on the market or whatever. Long story short, in that period, a week later or so, things worked out that we came to Australia with a family, and then we drove around a bit, and then we realized, listen, it's not good for Cindy to sit 280 days a year by herself in Hong Kong on a postage stamp.
Yeah.
It will be better for her mental state and whatever to actually start coming to Australia and actually be here and start building friendship circle and whatever. We got back 3 weeks later. We got opening up. We said, okay, I'm going to get a furnished apartment in Hong Kong whenever I am there. We're going to start building our house in Australia, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Not only did I save a bag load of money by not having an apartment committed, I only paid for the days that I'm in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So looking back, God we closed those doors. We tried to push it so hard, and then he just guided us to the different direction, avenue where we ended up.
Isn't that interesting? Thank you for sharing that. Isn't that so interesting that sometimes the blessing of God is the closed door.
Yes.
Right? Like we kind of go, well, God, here's the list, and we go, your blessing is the yes, yes, yes. But what if the no is the blessing of God? Because like you said, you thought, well, we wanted it, this and that, and then the closed door caused another series of events that in hindsight, you're going, actually, God really took care of us here. And because the door, he closed the door, he said no. And I think that really testifies, Leroux, to the providential, loving hand of the Father, right? He's so committed. He's so committed to us.
No, absolutely. Yeah. One small other thing on that is, so we were from Singapore 2 years before that, we were going to go, the whole company, the whole office was going to move to Dubai.
Right.
And planned, me being the finance custodian and everything organized, go and have a look for rental real estate. We paid deposits for other people's children for schools. We were in a meeting, and Cindy was with me the following morning. The connecting flight was to Dubai to actually go and set it up. In the meeting, finished the meeting, an hour later, my boss comes to me and says, listen, we're not going to Dubai anymore. The office is not moving.
Wow.
So God just closed that door again after all this effort. So then you think, but why do all these things? Why do all the arrangements? Why allow us to go so far down the line? Sure. However, looking back, what happened is we stayed longer in Singapore. We became Singapore citizens. There's so many other blessings that we received for not going to Dubai. So in other words, going to Dubai wouldn't have been a bad thing, but it was obviously God had a better plan.
Yeah. I love that at the start, Leroux, you talked about that, you know, in the midst of it, that in the midst of this journey with your career, that you and your wife, you said, you know, you really, both of you, you just purposed that you would stay close to God, you know, in the midst of it, because you've obviously gone and lived a, you know, a real career, a real global career, and yet this thought of staying close to God. I wonder if we might be able to get a little practical now that we've sort of got some context of the story, and you know, what would you say would be maybe a couple of really words of wisdom that maybe a mentor or some sort of pastor or a spiritual father, you know, maybe gave you that has undergirded you or really helped you in your journey?
Yeah, so it's probably well-known idioms or sayings, and but both of them, my dad told me at a very young age. And the one thing was, later I found out he borrowed it from Teddy Roosevelt's daughter.
Okay.
She apparently said, if you don't have anything good to say, then say nothing. And so often you get into a discussion or you get into an argument, you get some environment, and then it's so easy to say something nasty. It's so easy to say something that is not good, especially in the secular world, gossiping and whatever. So in other words, so to try to whatever you do in the workplace is like, in other words, it's easy to go and save face, or easy to go in the secular world to say something, because at that point in time you think, oh, it would be good to undermine somebody else, my competitor. We both go for the same position or some project or whatever, and to start saying something there. If you don't have something good to say, then just keep quiet. I mean, and I think God will honor you if you do that, instead of saying something bad. That's the one thing. And the other thing is, what my dad told me, and this is just, it's old, it's very old. He's like, that happened when I messed up. He said to me, listen, you made the bed, now you go and lie in it. So don't blame anybody else for your mistakes.
Right, own it. Is that
own your mistakes, because the moment you blame somebody, you're not going to learn from them. The moment you learn from them, you realize it's yours. You're going to think twice next time if you make the same one again. So those are basically probably two things, and if it brings down into workplace, I think it's also part of the kingdom business environment, correct? Don't gossip. Be straight. Say good things about even your competitors. If your competitor does good, you also do good, I think, because you build a bigger market. So things like that. So and own up to your decisions. Good or bad.
I love that thought about competitors. You know, I really, you know, in the marketplace in general, we're taught about this with this spirit of competition, that almost you've got to, like you said, undermine the competitors to get ahead. And you know, many times people don't play fair, but I really think part of faith is not to say that we shouldn't be competitive, but I don't actually have to kneecap anybody. I don't have to, and like you said, I think the other thing is, I'm just going to try and be the best, whatever, you know, that I can be. And you know what, the clients that are assigned to my business or my enterprise, they're going to come, and the ones that aren't, they're probably going to go to my competitors, and that's okay. You know, there's plenty of money, there's plenty of business, you know, to go around, and I think that's a wonderful handle on it. Let me ask you this question. If we were to go in a time machine, right? So here we go. If we were to go in a time machine and we were to go back 20 years when you're 21, you're welcome. So you're 21. So we're going to go on a time machine, 20 years.
Can I stay there?
No, you can't. And you get an opportunity to spend a couple of minutes with the 21-year-old version of you, and you're able to, just give a couple of pieces of advice to the 21-year-old you, knowing you can't tell him everything that's going to happen, but you can give him some advice. This is the game. What would be a couple of things that you would tell a 21-year-old you? What would you say?
First of all, I'd probably tell him, take that job. Opportunities come around, whether you look for them or not. Sometimes you go and look for opportunities, it comes, sometimes it just happens. So, but I think if I did that, my international experience would have started much earlier. So in other words, and I had and my career actually only started to excel the moment I actually stepped into the last 17 years. It was not bad up to then, but it actually excelled from that point forward. And maybe if I did it earlier, because I had the opportunity and I didn't take it.
Right.
21.
Right.
I was around 21 years when the Berlin Wall came down.
Okay.
And the audit firm I was working for at that point in time were recruiting young people to go to Eastern Europe to set up processes, systems, governance, and whatever, because it was communist. It was they didn't have proper those kind of things. They managed it completely different. So now suddenly they needed all these things, and I didn't go for the wrong reason. And it was a girl. Okay, I didn't want to leave the girl behind or whatever. I lost the job. Eventually, afterwards, later on, I lost the girl in any case. So,
I thought you were going to say, "But I married the girl, and it's okay."
No. So I said, maybe take the job. If I know now.
Okay.
Because my career excelled it excelled when I started my international stints. So if I could have started that earlier,
a bit earlier,
I think it would have been even better for me. But so the point is think very careful when an opportunity is knocking on your door. It might be God knocking and say to you, "Listen, this is for you," and be very careful just to wave it off or not doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I love that.
That's basically what I would tell myself. And being closer to God earlier on, I think with us, me and Cindy getting closer to God later on in my career, in my life, I think it would have also been better if I actually involved him more earlier on, if I see how good he was and how gracious he was to us later on when we did do it. So don't postpone. Don't postpone that. I mean, you think it's better. You think you're wise. You're not when you're young. You're actually quite stupid.
I have this thing where I say, I used to say to my son, my oldest son, he's 25 now, and I said to him, "Hey man," when he was, maybe when he's being pushing. I mean, he's married now, whatever. But when he gets a bit cocky, I just say to him, "Hey man, you don't even know anything yet." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm 25 years old." And I said to him, "You got to wait. You got to wait till you're at least 30." And he said, "Why? Why do I have to wait till I'm 30?" And I said, "Unless you've suffered for 30 years, you don't know anything." I said, "Tell me at 31 what you know, and I'll believe you, because you'll have enough pain and you'll have made enough mistakes to know that you're not all that. You're not all that, and a bag of chips. Like you'll have it more tempered." That's amazing. It's amazing. I wonder, Leroux, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to. We've got obviously some great guys and girls with us online, but I wonder if you've got a question or a comment that you'd want to do. Do you want to just pop it in the chat section? I'll see it, and we'll, because I can talk to Leroux all night and ask him a million other questions. I am going to ask you another question, but while I ask the next question, we've probably got an opportunity here. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment moving forward, that would be great. The question I've got for you, the next one, Leroux, is this: that now let's talk about today. You are you're still working for this multinational firm, or where are you at? Just to help us to understand the context.
No, I retired in September last year, so,
wow.
I'm not working anymore. I think COVID was the catalyst for that. I absolutely loved and enjoyed my job. It was unbelievably amazing. But COVID forced the hamster wheel to stop. I had to get off. The world stopped. I had to get off, and realized that there's other things to do. And my health suffered a lot of stress, a lot of balls to keep up in the air the whole time while I'm sleeping. The rest of my team, the rest of the world's awake. I wake up in the morning, this multitude of emails and stuff coming in, apart from the midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock Zoom calls and meetings that we had. So in other words, it was quite challenging. And I just said, listen, I don't have to do this anymore. I mean, God blessed us a lot financially. I don't have to worry about that. So why not? Why not get some personal time to make up for all the time that I've sacrificed over the years with family? My parents live close to us. Cindy's mum also. We've saw them once a year, maybe. Now we see them at least once a week. Wow. And it's a pity because it's 20 years later. I mean, since we've left, and so it's a lot of time that we've sacrificed. That you won't get back. Back. So I thought going on for a longer time, it's not worth it, and that's why I stopped. No, I get that. And look, I mean, you've got at least another 65 years inside of you, so you're only just out the gate, and you figured out what you don't like, and now you can. Well, you live in the Hunter Valley, so you're probably going to plant a vineyard and grow some sort of wine or moonshine. I haven't made any plans. I'm still enjoying not having any responsibility and accountability at this point in time. I do tease Cindy and say she must stop giving me things to do at home. Otherwise, I might go back to work. Maybe you should tell Cindy it's her turn now. You did the first. You did the first half. It's her turn. There's a interesting question here. Just asking about this comes out of your roots here in South Africa. So obviously you would have been a Christian family in the time of apartheid, and with all that going on, how did that sort of season shape you? Like, were there some things that, I mean, you lived it. We know a little bit about it. It's a little difficult. I mean, we have some context in Australia in our own space, but what would be, maybe just as a Christian in that space, what would be something that you might help us understand that time, or how you negotiated it? It came down in 94. I left South Africa mid-90s, 96, 97 for the first time. Through our by school and stuff, we were like part of the, I remember that tours that came in from New Zealand, the Rebel tour and the aeroplanes and those things. It was not good. In other words, we in Cape Town, I grew up in Cape Town. And the different parts of South Africa is quite different regarding the racial interactions. So in other words, Cape Town is has always been very moderate area. Even today, it's the most moderate area, the more balanced of people in it. So in other words, we were not too exposed to it. I mean, regarding conflict in the Cape Town area where we grew up. So being young, you don't know. Okay, the adults keep those kind of things from you. You just grow up to, this is how it to be. You can fast forward, and young people growing up today, they don't know what apartheid is. They've never lived under it, so they've got no clue about it. So the similar reverse is true for us. We didn't know anything different when we grew up. So that
Right.
was just how it is. We were cut off from the world for many things. So in other words, so from that part is also that you sometimes, and looking back at it, and afterwards going to Soweto to that the museums and the things that happened, and you get the other perspective. Then you have a more balanced view. So now when you grow up, you don't have a balanced view. You have only your side's view, because it's a conflict. It's propaganda both ways, both sides. Correct.
I hear. I hear.
So in other words, core root, looking back in Christian principles, it's wrong. Okay, God created us all equal. Okay, there could have been other ways of dealing with it. The government of the day or then decided that's the way they're going to deal with it. And I think it's not unique in South Africa. I think you get it in Australia, you get it in the US, you get it everywhere. And the thing for South Africa is that basically they put it on the law books. I think that's where they probably not made the mistake, but that's where they exposed everything to the rest of the world, because they actually wrote it down in the law. The rest of the world is not. They abolished things, but then in the cultural society, it was still there. It didn't go away.
It's still culturally accepted and or not, but it's not written in law, right? Like that's the big difference. Yeah,
that's the big difference. It wasn't right. I mean, hindsight, whatever, it wasn't right. But as growing up, quite protected from it, and because I was in Cape Town, which was so moderate. You didn't have all those conflicts. Most of those conflicts happened up in the Johannesburg area, where there was really, really big conflict between the various different. But it was not only white and black. It was blacks between colors, to them and the Asians. And those are the four main races in South Africa. So it wasn't a black-white thing. It was even amongst today, among the black community, the two big black communities is Xhosas and Zulus. They at each other the whole time as well. It's just in the nature.
No, I hear. Thank you, Leroux. Before I let you off the hook now, is there, like, tonight there's a bunch of people on. We've recorded this as well, and we're going to record these masterminds and really try and create them as a resource for not only, of course, the business community at HopeUC, but broader. If thinking about people that are obviously going to be watching this type of an interview, people, believers that are in the marketplace, whether they own their own enterprises or are at the beginning, middle, or end of their careers. If you were to just maybe a last thought or something about how would you encourage them to just do well and at the same time connect that to their passion for God? What would be maybe a last thought around that?
Yes, it's basically some disciplines, correct, but you have to apply daily with when you're in your marketplace. I think important, because and that's what we learned from being in this difficult places is like you need to have a support structure.
Right.
You cannot just talk to your colleagues. Okay, you need to have a support structure outside of the work, especially when you're in a leadership position, because your friends at work become less than your subordinates. Okay, so in other words, it's a bonus. It's actually almost a requirement, in my view, that other person is a Christian, that has the same value systems as you are. So
a mentor. You're saying like maybe a Christian mentor, maybe.
It can be a mentor, but it can also just be a friend. It can be a friend at church. It can just be a friend that you hook up and says, "I need to release steam. I can't do that towards anybody at the office." In other words, and I'd like to just get that off my chest. I want to talk and discuss, get an input from somebody that doesn't know the whole context. Maybe you get a good idea from that person. So just have a support structure. You need to be able to speak to other people than outside your work, places about your work.
Great.
Even if it's just to release esteem. And once you talk about some things, I think that's how God works with me. Cindy and I often used to talk about things. And while you speak it, the thoughts come into your mind. And that's how God, for me, God gave me the wisdom through me speaking about it.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Your thoughts, you organize your thoughts by speaking about it outside of the work. Yeah. That's the one thing. The other one is pray and pray with somebody. So don't just pray by yourself. Find a prayer buddy for your work. So listen, okay, Dan, you are my prayer buddy for my job, my business. Maybe we can be for each other, but for my business and for me, I want you to regularly pray with me. God promises, two together, he's there.
It's powerful.
And it's unbelievably powerful. Okay. And again, when you pray out loud, because when you are with two people together, you'll pray out loud. The moment you pray out loud again, your thoughts, I believe it strongly, your thoughts is organizing. And that's how the wisdom, what you call it, the cycle is starting, getting momentum. Yeah. And then from a business point of view, honestly believe it, Malachi says, God says, test me in this. Yeah. So you have to honor your God with your wealth.
Got to honor your God. Yeah.
You have to honor him. I mean, we tithe fully and we cannot tell you how much God has blessed us for doing that. It is unbelievably powerful. And I think for businesses as well. It belongs to God. Everything belongs to God. You should be happy that you get 90% back or 80% or whatever your percentage is that you want to take back. It's a great deal.
It's a great deal. Yeah,
you wouldn't make it if God didn't help you. If God didn't put the places, bring your customers and whatever. Yeah. So that's a few. That's maybe
that's great.
Pray and honor God.
Godly mentor, pray and honor God with your wealth and the increase. I think that's amazing. Thank you, Leroux. Thank you for tonight and just making yourself available. Really very rich. I know we only touched the tip of the iceberg, and the 1 hour is designed to do that. We just again really appreciate your journey and believe that your best days are definitely in front of you. So I'm looking forward to the. Tell me when the first vintage of that wine comes through. That would be amazing. We'll use it for communion, and it'd be just great. Thank you again for tonight, and really appreciate having you speak to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for the honor, and I thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for tonight. I hope and trust that was rich. It an hour goes quick when we trying to ask someone their life story. I'm sure we could take hours to do that. We're going to try and do this bi-monthly, and so we'll keep you posted in that. We will. Vanessa's going to capture this, put it up on our YouTube, Center of Excellence YouTube, and send you guys the link so that if you've got some friends that weren't able to be on tonight, that you can encourage them and they can share that. Just hear the richness of this thing. So. Bless you, thank you, and see you somewhere in Central Coast, Hunter Valley, Canberra. I see we've got some interstate buddies here. Bless you, thank you, and have a great night. Bye now. Thank you.